Olá, sejam todos bem-vindos e bem-vindas à grande final do oitavo Your Voice, o concurso cultural de discursos da cultura inglesa. Criado em 2014, o Your Voice está quase finalizando agora a sua oitava edição, que aconteceu em formato totalmente digital, com uma premiação muito especial. Vocês verão aqui na nossa competição alunos da cultura inglesa dos estados de São Paulo, Santa Catarina, Bahia, Rio de Janeiro, Rio Grande do Sul, Distrito Federal, Goiás, Tocantins e Espírito Santo, dos níveis de inglês básico, intermediário e avançado. O objetivo da cultura inglesa com este evento é valorizar a importância da comunicação oral no mundo, preparar o nosso aluno para expressar suas ideias com segurança em público, propiciar também um momento muito especial de pesquisa e troca cultural e, claro, apoiar e valorizar aquele aluno da cultura inglesa que deseja ser um agente transformador do mundo a partir do compartilhamento de suas ideias. Nesta edição, nós recebemos mais de 1.500 inscrições. Na primeira fase do concurso, os candidatos enviaram seu discurso em vídeo. Os discursos foram avaliados por um time de jurados e 475 alunos e alunas passaram para as quartas de final. Nas quartas de final, eles se apresentaram aqui, ao vivo, e então 160 candidatos passaram para as semifinais. Nas semifinais, eles se apresentaram novamente aqui na nossa plataforma ao vivo, e então 51 candidatos passaram para a grande final, que está acontecendo no dia de hoje. Tudo isso foi feito por todos os nossos alunos, discursando em inglês. Acredito que a maioria de nós, a galera que está assistindo a gente, pela nossa plataforma, não teria essa mesma coragem, nem mesmo fazendo nossa própria língua, imagina então numa língua estrangeira. Não é pouca coisa, todos que estão aqui já são vencedores, sim, e já superaram e evoluíram bastante durante todo esse processo. Ao término das semifinais, todos os candidatos finalistas tiveram a chance de conversar um pouquinho com os nossos jurados e receber algumas dicas para melhorar ainda mais o discurso que eles haviam apresentado. Ou seja, preparem os corações, porque vai ser, enfim, um grande final de tarde nessa final do Your Voice. A dinâmica de hoje será a mesma das quartas de final e das semifinais, mas eu gostaria de repassar algumas informações e algumas das principais regras. Primeira coisa, vocês que estão assistindo pela plataforma do Your Voice, interajam conosco. Vocês podem mostrar a torcida de vocês pelo nosso chat e também podem fazer posts nas redes sociais aqui através da plataforma. Todas essas informações estão do lado esquerdo, ok? No nosso menu. Ao se inscreverem, os nossos alunos foram divididos em 9 categorias, de acordo com o nível de inglês de cada um. Cada candidato concorre, portanto, somente com aqueles que estão inscritos na mesma categoria. Nesta sessão, se apresentarão os candidatos da categoria 8. Esta categoria é um pouquinho diferente das outras, porque ela já é uma etapa preparatória para quem quiser participar em 2023 do maior concurso de discursos do mundo, the ESU International Public Speaking Competition, que é uma competição internacional que reúne jovens de 16 a 20 anos de mais de 50 países. Uma experiência de intercâmbio cultural sem igual. Cada categoria possui uma duração de discurso diferente, e a duração desta categoria aqui é a mesma duração praticada na competição internacional que eu mencionei antes. Assim, os candidatos já se preparam e treinam com a duração correta. A duração para os discursos da categoria 8 é, portanto, de 5 minutos para cada candidato. Há uma margem de tolerância, então os candidatos dessas categorias precisam apresentar um discurso que dure entre 4 minutos e meio e 5 minutos e meio. Temos aqui um timekeeper, que é o Alexandre, que controlará a duração de cada apresentação e fará soar um sinal sonoro como este, para alertar o candidato sobre a duração de seu discurso. O sinal será tocado quando o candidato atingir 4 minutos e meio, depois novamente quando atingir 5 minutos e tocado uma última vez caso o candidato atinja 5 minutos e meio. O candidato que terminar o seu discurso antes dos 4 minutos e meio ou depois de 5 minutos e meio pode ser penalizado. Após o término das apresentações, os candidatos respondem a perguntas e cada categoria possui uma regra específica quanto a isso. No caso da categoria 8, os candidatos responderão a 2 perguntas que serão feitas pelos outros candidatos ou pelos nossos jurados. A duração máxima para a resposta de cada pergunta é de 1 minuto e o candidato que não iniciar a sua resposta em até 10 segundos perde a chance de responder. E claro, vocês que estão assistindo a gente pela nossa plataforma, a nossa plateia, vai participar da grande final. Ao término desta categoria, colocaremos um link no chat para que vocês possam votar no candidato favorito. Este link ele fica por 2 minutinhos no ar, então eu peço que vocês fiquem muito atentos ao final das apresentações para que vocês tenham a chance de escolher o candidato favorito de vocês. Ok? O candidato eleito por vocês, pelo público, ganhará um reader digital da NetGeo. Se por um acaso a conexão de algum candidato falhar ou cair, não precisa se preocupar, seguimos com as apresentações de acordo com a ordem sorteada, mas, claro, daremos uma nova oportunidade, daremos uma nova oportunidade para aquele aluno que perdeu a conexão. Então, não precisa ficar preocupado, tá bom? Aqui estão os jurados Emma, Lécio, Joana e Márcia, que avaliarão os discursos apresentados e se reunirão após a apresentação de todos para definir primeiro, segundo e terceiro lugar da categoria 8. Vamos, então, relembrar Ai, gente, ao vivo, né? Vou voltar. Vamos relembrar, então, quais são os prêmios da nossa grande final. Quem ficar em primeiro, segundo ou terceiro lugar terá o discurso vinculado no podcast ou webinar da Cultura Inglesa. Além disso, temos outros prêmios muito especiais. Então, quem ficar em terceiro lugar ganha uma bolsa de 25% em qualquer curso da Cultura Inglesa e 25% de isenção na inscrição para um exame de Cambridge. Então, os dois acontecerão no próximo semestre. Quem fica em segundo lugar ganha 50% de bolsa em qualquer curso da Cultura Inglesa e 50% de isenção na inscrição para o exame de Cambridge. E, claro, quem ficar em primeiro lugar vai receber, então, uma bolsa de 100% em qualquer curso da Cultura Inglesa e isenção total no exame de Cambridge. Antes da gente começar as apresentações, eu gostaria de tirar uma foto para que a gente registre esse momento, essa grande final. Então, candidatos, jurados, todos que estão comigo aqui no Zoom, olhando para a câmera com um sorriso, todo mundo animado, vamos lá? A produção falou que está tudo certo, foto tirada. E agora, eu vou convidar a Fernanda, que vai fazer aquele sorteio para a gente definir a ordem das apresentações dos candidatos. Fernanda, é com você.
Obrigada, Vitória. Oi, gente, vou compartilhar minha tela com vocês para a gente fazer o sorteio ao vivo. Então, a gente tem aqui os nomes, né, das candidatas e candidato em ordem alfabética e a gente vai embaralhar a lista, tá bom? Para ver como é que fica. E, tcharam, a ordem de apresentação será Juliana, Luísa, Cibele, Letícia, Amanda e Francisco. Tá legal? Muito obrigada, Vitória, e uma ótima apresentação para todos.
Nós já temos, então, a ordem das apresentações. Eu gostaria de lembrar a todos que estão aqui no Zoom comigo que mantenham as câmeras ligadas, abertas, e mantenham os microfones desligados, fechados, ok? Assim, o evento ocorre de forma mais tranquila e suave. Vamos começar, então. Bom evento a todos vocês que estão assistindo pela plataforma. Respirem fundo, candidatos da categoria 8, vai dar tudo certo. E começaremos, então, com a nossa candidata Juliana. Juliana, você está por aí?
Estou aqui.
É com você.
Hello, good evening. I'm Juliana. I'm a student at Cultura Inglesa in Rio de Janeiro, the branch in Campo Grande, Cesare de Mello, and I'm honored to be here in this final with my fellow participants to talk about the topic we expect too much from our heroes. So, to start, imagine the situation. You are in a movie theater, sitting in a comfortable chair, eating your popcorn, and the movie starts. As soon as the movie begins, you see the main character living a normal life in their home. All of a sudden, they receive a call to adventure. They receive a message or someone tell them, or they will see themselves in a situation where they need to go through an adventure to save the world or to save a beloved one. After receiving this calling, they go through the quest. They leave their ordinary world and enter in a mischievous one. In the quest, they find alliances and assistance. Maybe they will receive some powers or achieve some abilities and skills. The character will face their biggest fear and probably doubt themselves. They will face many trials and difficulties, but they will overcome them and succeed in the end. After the quest, they won't be a person. They will be heroes. They will be a whole different person. In Star Wars, for example, Obi-Wan Kenobi received the message, "You are my only hope," and went on a journey to save the galaxy. In Harry Potter stories, he received a letter from an owl and went to Hogwarts without knowing he would be responsible for saving the wizard world. So, what do those stories have in common, you may ask me? It's the hero's journey, a way to build narratives using some archetypes. If you give a closer look at several books, movies, or video games, you will find many examples of this. Joseph Campbell, a writer and researcher, did that and wrote a book about it. It is called A Hero with 1,000 Faces. Throughout his research, he has found a similar journey in thousands of stories around the world. Many other studies have shown that we, as human beings, need to believe in some myths and in some stories. We need to be convinced by these ideal people to get us through life and through normal days. We need to have this example of people that succeeded and sailed through problems to motivate us. They help us to face some challenges during our lives. This is our human nature. But there is a problem with that. What do you think it is? The problem is believing that this will happen in our lives and with people that we know, with our personal and everyday heroes. Everybody has a hero. It can be a parent, a teacher, a person that you know, a political figure, or a celebrity, someone that inspires you and motivates you. There is a quote from Dune, a book by Frank Herbert, that although it's fiction, I really enjoy it. And it says, "There is probably no more terrible instant of enlightenment than the one in which you discover your father is a man." Really, reading these books and trusting in these myths, we tend to believe that this will happen with everybody, with our fathers, with our mothers, our parents, and with people that we know. And we believe that they will overcome everything, that they will succeed, and they will always be a good example for us. And we expect so much from them. But in reality, they are people, normal people like us, with their problems, with their failure, with their own experience. And we must understand that. We can be disappointed if someday they do something that let us down, that do something that we don't expect, because normal people commit mistakes. And we can't believe that these people that motivated us will be perfect with the whole story, with the pattern, and they will succeed in the end, they'll be a model for us. So that's why I really like the quote from the book. Every time we discover our father is a man, that our mother is a real woman with desires, with their own issues, this can be disappointing for us. But the message I want to leave today with this speech is that sometimes your hero needs a hero. Like Obi-Wan, as I said at the beginning, he needed Anakin and the whole Jedi crew to defeat Voldemort. And Harry Potter needed Ron and Hermione to defeat Voldemort. Be the one who reach out a hand to help. Sometimes a hand is all you need to finish a quest. So thank you for your attention.
Obrigada, Juliana. Vamos às perguntas, começando com os candidatos. Vocês têm alguma pergunta para a Juliana? Os nossos candidatos? Alguma pergunta para a Juliana? Não? Então eu vou passar a palavra para a nossa jurada Emma.
Hello, Juliana. Thank you for your speech. Juliana, in the beginning of your speech, you talk about how many times a person or a hero receives a call to adventure or a message somehow. Have you ever received this sort of message? Was there ever a situation where you were called for a quest or something like that?
Thank you, Emma, for your question. And I believe that the hero's journey is a metaphor for our lives as human beings. And I believe these adventures in this quest are moments in our lives. So I believe the time that I had to decide what I was going to study at college, for example, it was a call to adventure for me because it was a different world for me and I had to learn new things and achieve new abilities and skills. So I think this was my call to adventure.
Thank you.
Gostaria, então, de confirmar se nenhum outro candidato tem uma pergunta para a Juliana. Estão todos tímidos nesta grande final. Quem sabe nos próximos vocês, né, ficam mais à vontade para perguntar. Então, eu vou chamar a nossa outra jurada, Joana, para fazer a pergunta.
Hello, Juliana. Thank you for your speech. My question is also related to Emma's question. And you talked about the hero journey. And I'd like to know if in this difficult moment that you had, like this turning point, do you think you would have done anything differently when you had to make this decision?
Okay, thank you, Joanna, for your question. And I don't think I would have done anything different because I believe it's a path and everything that I've experienced in my life has helped it to shape who I am. So I would have changed anything in my journey and with my alliances and what I've learned. Thank you.
Okay, Juliana, thank you.
Obrigada, Juliana, pelo seu discurso e pelas suas respostas. Vamos à próxima candidata da categoria 8, que é a Luísa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, hello everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Firstly, I want to start by sharing with you a really interesting conversation that I've had with my two little cousins. We were at my uncle's house and they asked me to play with them and I said, yeah, what do you want to play? Almost immediately, the younger one, who is a big fan of the Avengers, jumped on me and said, let's play superheroes. A little upset, the eldest replied, oh, Patrick, I'm sick and tired of pretending that I'm Thor. Can we try something different and more realistic this time? Then I suggested, well, let's choose a real-life hero. It can be any adult that will inspire you. But that means that you can't choose anyone from Marvel. Is that okay, Patrick? Quickly, my youngest cousin answered, sure, so I'll be Batman. He's from DC. Honestly, I didn't see that coming. I just started laughing. And when I was about to explain what I meant by that, his brother said, no, Patrick, she's talking about real life heroes, such as the doctors and nurses during the pandemic. We started playing, but I kept thinking about what my cousin had said. It really intrigued me. I noticed that each person has a different reference of a hero. So as we've been going through a pandemic, their reference of heroism are the professionals who had to leave the safety of their homes and take the risk of exposing themselves directly to the coronavirus in order to help sick patients at the hospitals. Frankly, I was expecting that they would refer to their parents as their heroes because, at that age, I just remember drawing my father and my mother as heroes, doing everything for me and keeping me safe. So they were definitely my reference of heroism. However, this perspective changed as I grew up because, naturally, I started to have more responsibilities. And I realized that I couldn't expect too much from my heroes because there would have some things which my parents couldn't do for me. And I would have to do them by myself and be my own heroine. And the penny just dropped after I've read the incredible trilogy of The Hunger Games. Well, for those who haven't read it or even watched the movies yet, here's a brief summary. So the story begins in a post-apocalyptic nation, which has been divided into the capital, an autocratic state, that exploits the other 12 districts. Each year, a battle to the death in the form of the Hunger Games is held. The purpose is to punish the society for its failed attempt in making a rebellion a few years ago. Thus, every year, a boy and a girl are chosen as tributes from each of the oppressed districts to attend the Hunger Games. In the 74th edition of this event, Katniss' younger sister is chosen as tribute from District 12. However, Katniss volunteers herself as a tribute instead. In addition, unsatisfied with their life conditions, the society is inspired by Katniss' bravery and starts a revolution. To more or less sum up, Katniss wisely survives at the Hunger Games because she was her own heroine, and she becomes the symbol of the revolution that ends up turning into a war against the capital. In the end, it is only through support of society that, together, they're able to win this war, restore order, and rebuild the community. The point is, we tend to expect a lot from the people that we put on the pedestal. Our heroes are symbols for us of all the qualities we'd like to have and all the ambitions we'd like to satisfy. There is a range of real-life individuals and fictional characters ranging from nurses and parents to Katniss Everdeen that serve as models of heroic behavior. Nevertheless, regardless of who our heroes are, what we should bear in mind is that none of these people can make a notorious world changing alone. Therefore, in spite of waiting and expecting that they will transform our current scenario, the society could join and support these inspiring leadership figures so as to seek a possible change in the world. In fact, each of us may possess an inner hero that is capable of performing tremendous goodness for others by just doing simply everyday acts. In conclusion, as Albert Einstein once said, the world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do bad things, but because of those who look on and do nothing. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Luísa, pelo seu discurso. Temos, então, 2 candidatos que têm uma pergunta para você. Começaremos, então, com a Amanda.
Okay, hello, Luísa. I really enjoyed your speech. You know, in your speech, you mentioned the Hunger Games, right? And then you used it as an example. So I'd just like to know if you maybe have a favorite book out of the 3 of the books, or maybe a favorite character, and why is it your favorite?
Thanks, Amanda, for your question. Well, definitely that's hands down one of my favorite trilogy ever that I've ever read. And you asked me about a character. I love Katniss Everdeen. I took some valuable lessons from this book while I was reading it. And one of them is that Katniss is pretty resilient, and she's always looking for the ones that she loves. And that's something that I really appreciate, and I try to incorporate in my daily basis as much as I can.
Vamos agora à pergunta do Francisco.
All right, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see you. Also, amazing speech. But also related to the Hunger Games, you mentioned a situation in which it is life or death, and that you have to be your own hero. Has there ever been any situation in which you had to be your own heroine, in which you had to save yourself to fend for your own livelihood, or just generally your way of living?
Thanks for your question, Francisco. I do appreciate it. Yeah, that's a tough one, actually. But yeah, I would say that I remember once that I was in the last year of high school, and our final work wasn't good. And the teacher said, "You're going to change everything. You're going to need to change it." And everybody got desperate, and that was the time that I said, no, I need to be resilient. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to do it. And that was the time that I think that I was my own heroine, because I could get out of the situation in a brilliant way, and I was so proud of myself.
Obrigada, Luísa, pelo discurso.
Thank
Obrigada,
you.
candidatos, pelas perguntas. Vamos agora à próxima apresentação da categoria 8 com a Cibele.
Hello, can you listen to me? I remember when I was a little kid, and my eyes were delighted whenever I saw a strong person with superpowers to be able to save whoever needed it. And while growing up, I kept looking for such a thing. I kept transposing a responsibility of savings to someone who'd randomly show up. And according to the psychologist Freud, whenever a child feels that someone won't be able to save them, it develops future frustrations. And by that, we can conclude that we know absolutely nothing about heroes. From that idea, I'd like to begin today's speech by asking you a very important question. How many times did you expect someone to enlighten your eyes and bring you salvation from a situation in which you saw yourself drowning into? Most of you might have thought that this expectation may have existed in you, even as a tiny little sparkle. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm not here to make you disbelieve in people. In fact, I'm here to tell you that the hero you've been exhaustingly looking for is nearer than you may imagine. I believe in heroes made by flesh and blood, people who deal with emotions and that fulfill their own minds with their ideas. This might be a poetic delusion. However, understanding heroes as human beings helps us to convey and approach a real image of such enormously talented people who never back down. There, we've gotten to a very important topic, backing down. It's proven scientifically that human beings tend to reject sad feelings, and by doing so, we're liable to get more further away from reality, holding tight to a universe in which big feelings such as anger and sadness can't work together. I'd like to propose you a trip to 1937, the year in which Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had been released. Most of us saw Snow White as an example of human being, a girl who had gone through so much and never lost her faith in the goodness that went beyond all of the hatred she grew up into by living with her stepmother, the Evil Queen. The next thing I'm about to say might sound a little odd, I know, but actually, the Evil Queen is the most real character in this story. The Evil Queen contraposes the idea that Snow White conveys from her very first appearance, in which she expresses jealousy, anger, vanity, and ambition. Do you know what all of those feelings have in common? They are all together with human existence, meaning that those are prior feelings that exist in each and every person. So, does that mean that the Evil Queen is a hero? No. It just means that she's a closer approach to a human being. To everyone who listens to this speech, you might be wondering, what is my intention of exposing such an image? I reckon to show you that the hero you're constantly looking for has actually accompanied you for your whole life. This person was there when you were born. They watched your first steps, the first time you rode a bike, your first heartbreak, the moment you knew you had been approved in university. This person doesn't leave you by night and persists while the day goes by. This person is watching me right now. This person is you. And by recognizing yourself as your own hero, you may see that you, this whole time, have been expecting for someone who'd possibly never show up. While writing this speech, I reminded myself of a very important teacher I had once, who told me with the kindest words and the most gentle eyes that we have always to remember ourselves of the airplane rules. Once the oxygen mask falls, we need to wear it in ourselves first, and only after being safe, we can be able to save the others. And by that, she meant that self-salvation was something of a paramount importance that I was leaving aside. She's a so-called everyday hero, a person with fragilities just like everybody else who, despite all of the circumstances, understood that putting herself first was the first step to help anyone who needed it. Ladies and gentlemen, putting all those ideas together made me realize the amount of times that I met heroes throughout my life. And just like I mentioned in the very first beginning, they were all made of flesh and blood. And most of the times, they weren't confident of what track to follow or of the right path to trek. However, they tried, all of the time, to understand what the others had to say. Those heroes led me to this speech today. And they also taught me that I can be my own hero. And that doesn't mean that I am alone. It just means that whenever they're too busy looking for their own salvation, I can be the one with the super strength to face the little challenges of everyday life. To all of those heroes, my eternal gratitude. And to all of you here today, I call you out to a very important mission. Look in the mirror today and think of the amount of times you saved yourself and didn't even credit your inner hero enough for such an achievement. we can be our own heroes and not just only for one day. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sibeli Maria, and I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention and also for the amazing opportunity of being here today. Thank you.
Obrigada, Sibeli, pelo seu discurso. Algum candidato gostaria de fazer uma pergunta para a Sibeli? Amanda.
It's me again, making a question. I really liked your speech, Sibeli. Just out of curiosity, there's the last phrase you said in your speech, in the conclusion, you said that we can be our own heroes and not just for a day. Would it perhaps be a reference to the song Heroes by Bowie, or not? Did it come from anywhere else? Just out of curiosity.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, it's a reference to the song. I feel like this is a very powerful sentence and that we should take it into consideration in everyday life, basically. And just a curiosity, I remembered myself of this quote while watching a kid movie. It's a movie done by Netflix, and it is about kids who become heroes all of a sudden, and then they try to save the world. And then they mention this in the movie. And I watched it as a kid, and I thought, oh my God, I can be my own hero. And then I heard the song, and then it inspired me a lot to write this speech. Thank you very much for the question.
Vamos à próxima pergunta. Mais algum candidato gostaria de perguntar? Não? Então vamos ao jurado Lécio.
Hello, Sibeli. Good afternoon. Sibeli, my question is, how do you draw the line between self-salvation and selfishness?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Well, I feel like we do have to understand that self-salvation is putting yourself first, but that doesn't mean that you have to exclude what other people are feeling, or that you won't really be able to save those people because you're looking for your own salvation. I feel like we can really balance both things. So while trying to understand myself as a human being and as a person who exists in this planet, I can also help someone to understand their place in society as well, and to understand what they're feeling mostly. So being able to understand yourself isn't really being about only yourself. We can recognize ourselves in the other people. So this is a quote done by a philosopher, and it is really true. We need to understand people before we understand ourselves. So I feel like these are both things that can really help you into diving into your self-salvation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibeli.
Obrigada, Sibeli, pelo seu discurso, pelas respostas. Vamos à próxima candidata desta categoria, que é a Letícia. Lê.
Okay, so hey everybody, my name is Leticia, I'm 17 years old, and I'd like to start asking you something. Have you ever got punched in your stomach? Right in the stomach? Well, when I was 6 years old, I had my first karate competition, and I remember I got punched so hard in my stomach that I fell down into my knees during the fight in the middle of the ring. When I was there, I remember I felt so weak and vulnerable because there was no mom, there was no dad, and there was no sensei to save me. That was the moment I realized that in a fight, in real life or in a ring, you are alone. So you have to fight for yourself. So then I recovered, I got up, and I kept fighting until it was over. I didn't win the fight that day, but I learned one of the most important lessons of life, which is, do not wait for someone to go there and save you. Be your own hero. And this is related to a really interesting topic, which is, what makes a person be considered as a hero according to society? If you asked me 11 years ago, I would say that I am a hero. If you ask a child today, he could talk about Batman or Superman. If you asked a woman who was raped by Taliban, I suppose she won't have an answer for that. If you ask a Black person, he could talk about Oprah Winfrey or Zumbi dos Palmares. The significance of this is that the concept of hero is fluid. In other words, it changes according to the social, political, and historical moment we are in. For instance, After pandemic, I started suffering a lot of prejudice because I'm Asian. I remember that one day I was going to the supermarket and then a very angry man stopped me in the middle of the street and he started yelling that my race is cursed and I should go back to my country. Now tell me, who could have been a hero for me in that situation? After that day, I was afraid walking alone in the streets. And due to that, I started a really intense study routine, trying to find out ways better to feel better about what happened. And that was the moment I met Mahatma Gandhi's story. Did you know that this man set his country free from European hands all by himself? In addition to that, all his heroic journey started because he was suffering prejudice as a consequence of having a darker skin color that society used to consider as normal. From my perspective, this is the main point of being a hero, not being afraid to start small and then grow. Nowadays, people like to complain a lot about our problems, such as the high violence against women, or the high levels of depression, anxiety, or how Black people still suffer prejudice even after all these years. But what's the use of arguing that much and don't think about a solution? I deeply believe this is the biggest problem society has. People expect too much from their heroes. And people just complain over and over again. Sit down and wait for our next superhero to show up and solve all of our problems when we are actually totally capable of thinking about a solution and changing the world. That happens because society idealizes a lot about our heroes. They try to make us think that they are perfect and that we will never be worthy to be called as a hero. For example, have you ever noticed how sexualized women are in this universe? They always have long hair or tiny clothes or heels. But come on, please. It's 2022, let's be realistic. If a woman were fighting against crime, she would probably have to have a shaved hair or army clothes and athletic body, not heels or all the fantasies that the movie idealizes. So, from my perspective, the main point of being a hero is being brave enough to always do the right thing. Is being brave enough to have a voice. Being a hero is not about big acts or perfection. For example, the 6 years old I mentioned before, she's a hero because she did not give up fighting and gave the example to all the arena. Mahatma, Oprah, they are heroes because they are not afraid of having a voice. I can say that I am among a lot of heroes today because every single soul here inspired me some way. I am a hero because I try every day to make Asian prejudice stop. You are my hero today because you listened to me and remembered me that I can actually be heard. We are our own heroes, so do not wait to change the world. Thanks for having me.
Obrigada, Letícia, pelo seu discurso. Algum candidato gostaria de fazer uma pergunta para a Letícia? Por enquanto não, então vou começar com uma das nossas juradas, Márcia.
Thank you, Leticia, for your speech. You were really enthusiastic about your speech, and I'd like to know what has changed in your mind and your attitude, after researching and preparing for this discourse. You had to grab a lot of issues, and then probably you had to analyze them. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. And first, when I was a kid, I was in denial. I didn't want to recognize me as an Asian person, as a yellow skin. So after this traumatic event and after I started studying about it, I realized that I am a part of this community and I will suffer prejudice. There's nothing I can do. This is the world, but I can try to change it. For example, I have a friend, his name is Criado, and she's Japanese, and people used to call her Japa. after I studied about Mahatma Gandhi, I started talking with people that we should not do it because this is not right, to give nicknames related to the nationality. So I changed my point of view about me and about other people. So I believe I'm changing society for a better one in a certain way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Algum candidato? Tem alguma pergunta para a Letícia? Não? Então vamos para a jurada Emma.
Hello, Leticia. Thank you for your speech. Leticia, in your speech, you mentioned that the concept of being a hero changes according to each context, historical ones. My question is, do you think the same thing applies to different ages? For example, do you think that a 6-year-old and an adult will have different measures for a hero, and why?
Well, thank you for the question. You have such a valid point to see it, and the answer is yes. When I was a child, I used to consider myself as a hero. I used to consider my parents, or even fantasy heroes, such as Barbie, for example. She was a heroine for me. But when I grow up, I changed my point of view. Now Mahatma Gandhi is Oprah Winfrey. My mother is such a hero. They are great examples of heroes. So yes, the concept changes according to ages, because as much as you're growing, you start seeing the world differently, and it changes your vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Letícia. Vamos agora à próxima candidata da categoria 8, que é a Amanda.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's me again. I've made a couple questions before, but now it's time to start my speech. So let's go. They're off to find the hero of the day, but what if they should fall by someone's wicked way? Those are lyrics to a Metallica song, you know, one of my favorites. And it's about children who hope to find heroes outside of their homes when their parents should be their heroes. Now, a little bit about you listening to my speech right now. I would say that many of you, when asked, you know, out of the blue, would say, my parents are my heroes. And, well, I kind of agree with you. I would say that my parents are my heroes too. But I recognize that answering the question itself, who's your hero, is not quite simple. So a hero, a role model, a champion, is a person who's admired for having done something very brave or having achieved something great. And it's used to refer to a main character of a story who is usually good. Now, in Greek mythology, for example, a hero is a demigod, part mortal, part deity. And this last example that I will use forward explains how we might end up looking up to our heroes, but expecting too much from them. So we know that heroic figures have been present in human culture ever since the prehistoric period. So, I mean, basically forever. And it's about humble, driven, and sympathetic individuals that set up examples for society. You know, they wake up this part inside of us that also wants to be heroes. And I will explain this further again using the Greek demigod tales. So demigods are the offspring of a mortal and a god, as I mentioned. And like the latter, they're granted with strength and courage, so much courage, much more than a normal person. But also, just like us, they are flawed. They're emotionally intricate, and they try to do what's just, which might not always be the right thing to do. So some people would say that these imperfections are their Achilles' heel. But this is what actually makes them speak up to us. This side of us that wants what's best for everyone. Seeing their flaws makes us see ourselves in those heroic figures. So today's society is filled with devices that make constant the presence of important figures. So much like television did to celebrities and leaders of the 20th century, social media muscles in on people's deeds being observed and judged constantly. So I consider this environment we live in to kind of set up unrealistic expectations for everyone, you know, for me, for you, for maybe our own parents, but, you know, mostly to people in the public eye. So maybe a singer that you really like might be in a difficult situation about something they said in an interview. And it's about those people that we tend to have an idyllic image of. So also because of this social media phenomenon, we as a society tend to put people up a pedestal. So at their first mistake, skepticism and eventually disapproval take the lead. So I began my speech saying that our parents should be our heroes. Now, the thing that actually makes our parents heroes is that in the past, they made mistakes. And as their children, they don't want us to make the same mistakes that they did. Our parents, they brought us up, they care for us and they love us. But it's not only that makes them heroes. It's actually them wanting us to be better than them that makes them heroes. So, as I said, by definition, heroes are usually, but not always good. Being a hero is about more like being morally right. It's about being selfless. It's about proactivity. So the demigods, again, they engage on those journeys, those bold exploits in the name of the gods for the greater good of humanity, because it's the right thing to do. Much like most people we grant with the title of heroes, they just want what's best for most of us, or for everyone. So when we look outside of home for heroes, it can be smoke and mirrors. So each day we pick and choose the hero, and then at their first mistake, we kind of nullify the individual's character, which is clouded by their faults. It can show that we treat anyone as a disposable hero. So now I'll make a path for the conclusion of this speech by quoting The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I try to find one, but warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands, and in this neighborhood, heroes are scarce or simply not to be found. So in this passage, Gandalf talks of warriors who, instead of looking for the greater good of humanity because it's the right thing to do, show themselves as those not so selfless individuals. But it's up to us, like Gandalf, to judge the strength of one's heart, not of appearance, and this way, not to expect too much from our heroes. Thank you very much for your attention today.
Obrigada, Amanda. Vamos às perguntas, começando com uma das candidatas, Cibele.
Hello, first of all, congratulations for your speech. It was amazing. What I'd like to ask you is, you talked a little bit about setting up an example. So my question is, how do you think that we can set up an example in the contemporary society?
Okay, thanks for the question, and I'm glad that you enjoyed my speech. It's very hard when we think of setting up examples for others, because at least I think that I imagine that, okay, it's not like someone's going to take me as an example, but there's always like younger siblings, maybe cousins that we live together. So I feel like setting up examples, we need to try and focus on small attitudes. So like saying, for example, please and you're welcome, or being nice to others, maybe nice to strangers, those little actions that, at first you might not think that it's setting up an example. But when you take a look at the bigger picture, it does make a difference. It's those little things, those little everyday things that kind of help us set examples for others.
Vamos à próxima pergunta, agora da nossa jurada, Joana.
Hello, Amanda. Thank you for your speech. Regarding what you said about having relatable heroes who are flawed, how important do you think it is for us to have relatable representation in media, in literature, for example, especially for minority?
Oh, well, that's, a very interesting question. Thanks for it. Well, representation in media is something that's very, it can divide people's opinions. Talking about minorities specifically, we know that we actually don't have that much representation, and we're starting to build it right now for several, different minorities. I feel like it is a necessary thing, this representation, but it's really hard. The thing I would like to maybe put forward as a main point is that we can't actually show anyone as being perfect. And we have to actually accept the person's flaws. Maybe if they say something quite controversial, we need not to shout that person and say you're wrong and that's it. We actually need to teach the person, for instance, and also giving more space for minorities to manifest them. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Amanda.
Obrigada, Amanda, pelo seu discurso e pelas suas respostas. Vamos agora ao último candidato da categoria 8, que é o Francisco.
All right. Is everything good with the audio? Is everything fine?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Have you ever done something you knew was wrong, even if you had the best intentions? Have you ever done something altruistic, but not with the purest intentions either? Everybody has, and well, ladies and gentlemen, judges, fellow candidates, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here. My name's Francisco, and I'm going to take a different angle on the subject of our speeches, or more specifically, an opposite angle. I'm going to talk about anti-heroes, how they relate and differ from classic heroes, what makes them so alluring, and the ways they are oftentimes similar to these sometimes evil and immoral characters. But what is it that defines an anti-hero, though? They are complicated and compelling figures, and they are becoming more and more common in the mainstream culture, going from supporting roles to leading ones. If you watch TV and movies today, it seems that anti-heroes are the protagonists of choice, operating in a moral gray zone. They achieve good things by questionable means or do good things toward questionable ends. They're almost always selfish, yet not entirely evil. I think this almost Machiavellian ideal of balancing fear and love is what makes them such interesting and recognizable leads. But before we go into any examples, it's really important to talk about why anti-heroes have become so popular. People relate to flawed characters, which reflect, in one way or the other, their own struggles and problems. We can't all be heroes, not all of the time, and the majority of us live in a more nuanced space, especially when it comes to morality. Anti-heroes also demonstrate a shift in the expectation of what a hero should be. Their surge in popularity reveals that perfect titles are no longer identifiable, and that people need more gritty or realistic models to project onto. Let's take the case of Captain Jack Sparrow, for example, a personal favorite of mine. Jack is much like the characters of Greek myth, which is where we find some of the earliest examples of trickster protagonists, witty, finessed, and silver-tongued. Captain Jack is a bad guy by definition, but he never kills anyone. And despite his greediness, blatant alcoholism, and womanizing, he still performs heroic acts, like when he defeats the Kraken at the end of the second Pirates of the Caribbean, giving his own life to save the crew which had abandoned him. But anti-heroes aren't all just eloquence and charm. They can be quite stoic and can represent values or a sense of justice, as twisted as it may be. Take Batman and the Punisher, for example, or the extremely popular Walter White from Breaking Bad, which is one of the quintessential anti-heroes of the past decade. Facing death by cancer, Walter begins with good intentions, but ends up a murderous and completely amoral individual. At first, he thought his journey to the dark side was just a temporary necessity, but as is often common, power corrupts people, and thus he becomes more and more treacherous, justifying any and all of his behavior. This makes Walter White an extremely enticing character to watch, as we see him transform from family man to drug lord. And though Walter White's transformation is a moral one, or an immoral one, there are also more primitive manifestations, one could say, such as the classic Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The medic and the monster is a dynamic which has been repeated in The Amazing Hulk and Venom. These characters toggle back and forth between the animal and the elevated. Eddie Brock or Venom may use his powers to combat crime or bring justice, but in the end, he kills to feed, to continue to live. Venom is a creature of the most basic human impulse. He represents the shadow, something primal and frankly enthralling to watch. These archetypes demonstrate the inherent gulf in all of us, the yin and yang. The popularity of psychotherapy has made it clear that to be conflicted is to be human. And from the 60s on, the perfect or white hat hero has become harder and harder for us to trust in. Everyone has a past. Everyone has a dark spot on their record or on their psyche. Take Iron Man, for example, who used to be a multimillionaire arms dealer. or many other Marvel heroes, all of which seem to start out with intentions that are really not that pure or purely self-centered. I personally relate to anti-heroes because I see myself in them. They incorporate my darker impulses and motivations, parts of me that are supposed to be bad or distasteful. That doesn't mean I don't like regular superheroes, but I see myself as a deeply flawed person, and I struggle with all kinds of problems and issues, punishing myself when I cannot often meet what are unrealistic expectations. What I love about anti-heroes is that they provide hope, showing that there can be heroism without perfection, that we are all capable of astounding and heroic acts and can be redeemed through them, no matter how flawed or evil we were in the past. We can dream of being spotless heroes and admire their purity, but it is also in the figure of the anti-heroes that we see ourselves as we are. After all, as Niccolo Machiavelli once said, few see you for what you are, but all can see what you appear to be. Nobody's a hero, not all of the time. And it is through anti-heroes that we can deal with our own ambivalence. And that is why they are so important in any discussion about heroes and our expectations towards them in modern day. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Francisco, pelo seu discurso. Vamos às perguntas. Gostaria de saber se os nossos candidatos têm uma pergunta para o Francisco? Não, por enquanto não. Então a gente começa com um dos nossos jurados, Lécio.
Hello, Francisco. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good
Thank you
afternoon.
for your speech. Francisco, don't you think it's exhausting always rooting for the anti-hero?
That is a very tough question, but I don't think the anti-hero is a figure to always be rooted for. It is generally actually a supporting character, but it's been used in excess recently, I believe. But when in combination with other characters, it becomes a really good dynamic, especially with the hero and other such external forces. I believe they are not just always somebody you like, or they are sometimes somebody you love to hate. I think they're really interesting characters to see in most media. But I do understand how the overuse of them can become problematic, especially when trying to set a moral example. But other than that, I think they're mostly fine.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Vamos agora à próxima pergunta com a Márcia.
Hi, Francisco. Thank you very much for your speech. And I was wondering here, you mentioned something like power transform people, you know?
Corrupts people, yes.
And in fact, power corrupts people. So in a sense of corruption, if power corrupts people, then don't you think society should stop having heroes or projecting heroes? What is your point of view about that?
All right, that's a really interesting question. I do not believe society should reject heroes. That is, as other people have mentioned, an absurd notion since they are necessary for our own understanding of society as a whole. However, as some people have mentioned also in past speeches, we must be careful with our heroes. They are given way too much influence. They control people in a very strong manner. And sometimes heroes aren't always right, because in real life, heroes are only human, and they are very much liable to flaws. So I believe society shouldn't reject heroes, but it should be mindful of them. It should be careful of what they see as a hero and what they do, and to pick apart the good from the bad. Take the good lessons and learn from their mistakes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Obrigada, Francisco, pelo seu discurso e pelas respostas. E é desta forma que terminamos as apresentações da categoria 8. Eu tenho certeza de que os jurados estão, enfim, enlouquecidos com a decisão que eles terão que tomar daqui a pouco. Vai ser bem difícil, vai ser bem desafiador. Boa sorte, jurados e juradas. A plateia também, imagino que tenham gostado bastante e ficado super felizes por ter visto esses alunos falando inglês na frente de um público, e é muito, enfim, é muito incrível ver o quanto eles se dedicaram e o quanto eles se esforçaram para estar aqui hoje falando inglês em público. Daqui a pouco a gente anuncia os resultados, E eu gostaria de dizer só mais uma coisinha. Eu espero que vocês continuem praticando, continuem tendo esse interesse pela língua inglesa, continuem lendo, escrevendo e colocando as ideias de vocês para fora e deixando, enfim, o mundo escutar a voz de vocês. Tá bom? Parabéns a todos pelas apresentações de hoje. Agora, eu vou, então, liberar os nossos jurados para que eles possam deliberar e decidir os 3 primeiros lugares da categoria 8. Agora, estamos também colocando o link de votação para o prêmio Audience Choice. Então, você que está assistindo a gente pela nossa plataforma já pode acessar o link e votar no seu candidato favorito. O link não é clicável, então vocês devem selecionar o endereço, colar no navegador, apertar Enter e aí sim escolher o candidato favorito de vocês. Se vocês estão assistindo pelo celular, cuidado para não sair da transmissão enquanto vocês fazem esse processo de anotar o endereço e votar no candidato favorito de vocês, tá bom? Deixa eu continuar então agora. O candidato ou candidata que ganhar então o prêmio do voto popular receberá um reader digital da NetGeo, que é um livro super interessante em inglês relacionado ao nível de inglês que eles estão. Muito, muito, muito legal. E agora eu quero aproveitar para lembrar que este prêmio não tem relação com os prêmios de primeiro, segundo e terceiro lugar que eu mencionei anteriormente. Se por um acaso a pessoa que ganhar o prêmio do público também estiver entre os 3 nomes anunciados pelos jurados, aí sim essa pessoa também receberá alguns dos outros prêmios que eu também informei anteriormente. Aproveitem para votar, gente. O link já está no nosso chat aqui do lado esquerdo ou direito de vocês, enfim, onde tem um chat aí na nossa plataforma, tá bom? Enquanto os nossos jurados deliberam e conversam, eu gostaria de mostrar não só para os nossos candidatos que estão aqui hoje, mas também para vocês que estão nos assistindo, um vídeo que mostra um pouquinho sobre a ESU International Competition, dos quais esses candidatos que estão aqui comigo hoje podem vir a participar no ano que vem. O vídeo, infelizmente, não tem legenda, porque é um vídeo oficial da competição, mas, para vocês entenderem um pouquinho, é que esse vídeo ele foi gravado num contexto pré-pandemia, então a grande final era realizada, enfim, costumava ser realizada presencialmente em Londres, na Inglaterra, e um representante de cada país ia para lá. E, inclusive, vários alunos da cultura inglesa já tiveram essa oportunidade de irem até Londres fazer o discurso deles, com todas as despesas pagas, viu? Então, eu vou rodar o vídeo para vocês conhecerem um pouco mais desta grande competição internacional. Pode rodar.
It's been about traveling around the world while you're in London in just 5 days.
This is an international competition. It's one that involves over 50 countries, about 50,000 young people aged between 16 and 20 from all over the world, and they take part in national public speaking competitions in their country. The winners then come to the UK for the final, which is all about helping young people to discover their voice.
It is an extremely important event that unites young people all over the world. They start to embrace diversity.
But on top of all that, what they're learning is how to marshal arguments and persuade people, so they are going to become very important in their own countries. This is at the heart of international diplomacy.
If you take the world map, I believe people who use their voice can be those who take your country as small cities to a bigger platform. So I believe I'm here to use my voice to make my mark, not only in London, but also an international platform, and show them that Sri Lanka is more than just a few kilometers.
I myself come from an underprivileged background in the Philippines. It's not very usual for underprivileged people in the Philippines to actually speak English, for example, so I am very, very lucky. I want to be the voice for the people like me, like those who come from underprivileged backgrounds.
It's much more than the competition. The young people, when they come to London in May each year, spend a whole week together.
The cultural exchange that's involved is enormous.
It is a melting pot. The variety of people that you're going to meet, the mixing of cultures. We come from different realities, and the fact that we all speak the same language, it was amazing.
I loved that place. It was a great experience walking in London. It's very different from Sri Lanka, but I loved the country.
In the days leading up to the heats, people are going to be talking to us about their speeches. They're going to be delivering parts of them to us one-on-one.
They trained us in voice modulation, being like a bit dramatic with their speech, pauses.
The cultural exchange that happened was amazing. Coming here, it's like my brain just transported me a ride around the earth.
Welcome to the final of the English Speaking Union International Public Speaking Competition 2016.
Broadly speaking, we're looking at quality of delivery, pacing, how well they connect with their audience, how natural they are as a speaker in the room.
It's a question really of coming across with your heart and with your arguments.
Everybody did something different and everybody did it great. The delivery, the content, it was just amazing.
Today, I shall speak to you all on the power of humanity.
My mother could have very easily given me up. Instead, she chose to see me not as her broken rule, but as her one redemption.
See, that's the thing about us. We choose the easy way, not the right way.
Honor your word and practice the good things to grab that integrity.
That's it! This is the power within us. The power of choice.
The outcome of those things can bring a lot of integrity to entire populations.
What a wonderful afternoon it has been. What an amazing system it is to bring you all together, from Zimbabwe to Mongolia, from Sweden to Australia and everything in between. It is truly international. We have the winner of 2016 International Public Speaking Competition, who is Vivian Garcia-Cano.
It's amazing. I honestly am very happy. I'm glad to go home and show people that Mexicans, we can do important things.
Genuinely, it sounds so cliche to say it, but what I got for winning is nothing compared to what I got for competing. Just all the friends that I will have for the rest of my life and all the love that I got from those people.
It's such a well-organized competition. It was so amazing to be here. I think that this is a must for every single public speaker.
I'm really excited to go home with an actual award to show what I did here. And when I go back to Ghana, I would expose the opportunity to young people.
What we have here are extraordinarily talented and sophisticated young people, all of whom I suspect are going to make their mark in the world.
It's a very good platform for their future to spread their wings and fly to anywhere they want.
Incrível, não é mesmo? Espero que vocês tenham gostado de assistir um pouco mais sobre esta grande competição internacional. E deixa eu contar uma novidade para vocês. É quase certo de que em 2023 a competição voltará a ser presencial e todas que estão comigo aqui no Zoom podem sim concorrer a uma vaga para ir para Londres competir na grande final lá em Londres, né? Competir na grande final dessa competição internacional com candidatos do mundo inteiro. Nas próximas semanas, vocês receberão um e-mail nosso para que vocês saibam um pouquinho mais sobre esse assunto, leiam alguns detalhes e confirmem ou não a presença de vocês, ok? Nessas próximas etapas, para quem sabe, discursar em Londres no ano que vem. Os nossos jurados, como eu já previa, e acredito que todos vocês também já previam, ainda não voltaram da deliberação. Portanto, eu gostaria de passar mais um vídeo para vocês, mas que agora está relacionado a uma das atividades culturais que a Cultura Inglesa oferece para os alunos, que é o Pop Choir Live, que é um coral de músicas do pop rock britânico e americano, que ensaiam no formato online. Espero que vocês gostem dessa música, de uma das músicas, né, que eles ensaiaram durante este semestre, que fizeram parte da apresentação de encerramento deles. Pode rodar.
So this is what you meant
when you said that you were spent. And now it's time to build from the bottom of the pit right to the top. Don't hold back. Packing my bags and giving the academy a rain check. I don't ever want to let you down. I don't ever want to leave this town. 'Cause after all, this city never has been tonight. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just as same as I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? So this is where you fell, and I had left to sell. The path to right was run through the miles of road hell, right to the top. Don't look back. Turn into wreck, and even the commodities a rain check. I don't ever want to let you down. I don't ever want to leave this town. 'Cause after all, this city never has been tonight. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same that I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? This road never looked so lonely. This house doesn't burn down slowly. To ashes, to ashes. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same that I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same that I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am?
Espero que vocês tenham gostado desse trechinho, enfim, da apresentação que o grupo de coral, os grupos de coral online fizeram neste semestre. Lembrando que o Pop Choir é o coral feito por alunos e funcionários da Cultura Inglesa, oferecido de forma gratuita, tanto no formato online, para alunos de qualquer localidade, quanto presencial em algumas das nossas filiais. Assim como o Your Voice, o coral é mais um local para a prática de inglês fora da sala de aula. Então, ali os alunos trabalham aspectos musicais, culturais, linguísticos e, claro, de muita pronúncia. Vocês que estão aqui no Your Voice, que já pensam, enfim, já pensaram esse semestre em aprimorar as habilidades de expressão, também devem aproveitar essa oportunidade de fazer parte de um dos nossos grupos de coral ou até mesmo de teatro, para que vocês possam, enfim, desenvolver ainda mais todas essas habilidades. São muitas, muitas, muitas oportunidades para o nosso aluno desenvolver e praticar o inglês. E agora, como eu também já previa, né, mais uma vez, estou boa nas previsões, os jurados ainda não tomaram a decisão dos primeiro, segundo e terceiro lugar da categoria 8, portanto, faremos um breve intervalo, é o tempo de vocês beberem uma água, pegarem talvez uma pipoquinha e se prepararem para os resultados. Já já a gente volta. Quem está aqui no Zoom comigo, fica no Zoom, tá? Até! Estamos de volta com os resultados da categoria 8 e eu gostaria de chamar então, dar a palavra para uma das nossas juradas, Márcia.
Olá a todos, mais uma vez. Vocês não gostariam de ter ficado conosco nessa discussão. Vocês não fazem ideia como é difícil. A gente gostaria de aprovar todo mundo. Vocês foram excepcionais. Isso é verdade, não é balela. Excepcionais. Todos vocês já são vencedores, todos vocês venceram etapas incríveis e estão aqui conosco. Daqui para frente, vocês podem retornar para Your Voice, vocês podem ir para ESU, quando vocês quiserem, vocês estão prontos. É só dar mais um trabalho aí no discurso de vocês, está maravilhoso. Então, queria dar os parabéns a todos. Realmente, antes da gente anunciar os vencedores de todas as categorias, mas um abraço a todos e um aplauso enorme a todos vocês. Vocês já são vencedores por todas as ideias e a maneira como defenderam seus pontos de vista. Parabéns. Agora, sem mais delonga, eu passo a palavra para o Lécio.
Boa tarde a todos. Parabéns, mais uma vez. Eu vou anunciar agora a pessoa que venceu o prêmio da escolha da audiência. Essa pessoa que não necessariamente vai para o pódio, mas que já garante aí o seu reader da NetGeo por votação popular. E esta pessoa é a Juliana Marcolino. Parabéns para ela. Congratulations. Passo a palavra agora para a jurada Joana Lubac.
Me delegaram essa responsabilidade de anunciar os vencedores da categoria 8. E é realmente uma grande responsabilidade, porque vocês todos estão de parabéns. Realmente foi uma escolha muito difícil. Então, sem mais delongas, em terceiro lugar na categoria 8, Amanda Vasconcelos. Parabéns, Amanda. Em segundo lugar, na categoria 8, Letícia. Parabéns, Letícia. E em primeiro lugar, na categoria 8, Francisco Manuel. Parabéns, Francisco. Então, abracem a família de vocês, comemorem bastante. E parabéns a todos. Como já foi dito anteriormente, vocês todos já são vencedores. Parabéns por tudo.
Obrigada, jurados. Eu imagino que tenha sido bastante difícil essa decisão. Parabéns a todos os candidatos que chegaram até aqui. Parabéns a todos os candidatos que participaram do Your Voice esse ano. Vocês se superaram e foram muito corajosos e confiaram em vocês mesmos. Isso é muito, muito, muito incrível. Parabéns a todos, parabéns ao primeiro, segundo e terceiro lugar, parabéns também a quem ganhou o prêmio da audiência, enfim, a todos que ganharam o prêmio da plateia. Obrigado, plateia, por estar aqui mais uma vez assistindo a nossa competição. Muito obrigada à produção e a todos os envolvidos neste grande evento que acolhe alunos do Brasil inteiro. Quero agradecer também às famílias dos nossos candidatos que deram um super apoio e aos professores deles também. Parabéns a todos vocês, vocês se superaram, se desafiaram e é muito incrível ver os nossos alunos falando inglês desta forma. Mais uma vez, muito obrigada a presença, espero que vocês tenham curtido o 8º Your Voice, eu espero vê-los de volta no ano que vem, e é assim que a gente encerra mais uma edição desse evento incrível. Muito obrigada e até a próxima. Tchau!